All right. Welcome everyone to New Africa August. I'm your host, your moderator this afternoon, this evening, whatever you prefer. My name is Nasheed Muhammad. We have a great panel here for you all to discuss gender education, role of genders as they play in education. We're going to jump right in and have the panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Emilee Christopher. If you can introduce yourself, where you are, a little bit about yourself as it relates to the topic.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, thank you to We Buy Black for having me here today. My name is Emilee Christopher. I am a mother, an educator, a sister, a daughter, HBCU grad out of New York City. I am the managing director of talent at Public Preparatory Network. We are a network of single-sex charter schools in New York City. We have 4 campuses. 4 schools that we run here, and 3 of those are all girls and 1 is all boys. And I've been in the education field for about a decade.
Thank you so much. We're honored to have you as well. All right, we're going to jump over to Mr. Rictor Craig. Can you go ahead and do the same? Introduce yourself.
Absolutely. It's kind of hard to follow up after Miss Christopher. I mean, golly, it's just so dope there. I am a son. I am a father. I am a 3-time HBCU grad. I am a founder and a narrative shifter and a generational curse breaker. That's what I like to call myself. I am the co-founder of Statesman College Preparatory Academy for Boys in Southeast Washington, D.C. We are a grades 4 to 8 all boys school specifically designed for Black and brown boys. We are right where we need to be in the neighborhoods that need us the most. And I'm also the founder of the National Association of Black Male Educators, a nonprofit organization just designed to bring more men of color into the work. We have a lot of Black and brown kids in the work, and we don't see a lot of Black and brown men in the work with us. And so it's our job and our duty and our service to bring more men of color that are interested to come in and become educators.
Excellent. Thank you. As you see, they're getting to it already. Just in the introductions, it's just naturally coming out. All right, we're going to go over to Hanif and Bayyinah Khalil. Can y'all introduce yourselves, what you do as well?
Hey, yes, welcome. Thank you so much, We Buy Black in New Africa, for having this conference for the whole month of August. I know so many people here in Houston and in Florida who are looking forward to going to Atlanta for that one weekend, and now they're excited because they get the whole month instead of just one weekend. So we appreciate you all, and we appreciate the diversity of topics and presenters that you all have had. Once again, my name is Bayyinah Khalil. I am the co-founder of Camp Khalil Incorporated. This is our 17th year existence. We are a nonprofit organization that offers leadership and life skills training to youth ages 12 to 17. I'm a full-time teacher, daughter, sister, wife, mother, evolving servant of the Creator. So I'm just very glad to be here with my husband as
well. Well, once again, thank you all for having us, We Buy Black. Brother Nasheed, Brother Sharif, the whole staff of We Buy Black. You guys are excellent in the movement of unity amongst African Americans, especially in the economic development space. So we appreciate all the work that you're doing, that you continue to do, and we look forward to more and more of your efforts being on display to unify our people. It's a pleasure to be on this esteemed panel with my wife, with Sister Emilee and Brother Rictor on this very important topic of education. I couldn't ask for a better group of people to be on the panel with. They're doing some awesome things. Sister Emilee, Brother Rictor, I champion whatever you all are doing, and will continue to do. My name is Hanif Khalil, co-founder of Camp Khalil. I have a degree in sport management, and so I manage professional athletes, and I'm also the CEO of Crescent Sports Media as well. And I'm a father, son, brother, uncle, but tonight I'll just be your brother.
Excellent. Thank everyone for being here. We're honored, grateful to have you all. We're going to jump right into it. We got a excellent dynamic program for everyone. And so this question is for anyone who wants to jump in. Just explain the climate and the culture of your institution in which you work at as it relates to gender and students education. Just explain like culture and the climate of where you are.
Now, Nasheed, you got a bunch of humble people here,
I know.
man.
Look, I was trying to, to be humble. I'll talk about my boys all day. So
I went first last time, so I figured I'd let somebody else jump in.
I know. I mean, so at Statesman, I mean, our culture and our climate, we are all about our boys. Everything that we do for them. We wanted to make sure, we wanted to create a space where we put Black and brown boys first, nothing else. We do that and only that. And so the first thing that we do is we show our boys love and affirmation. They get a whole bunch of love and a whole bunch of affirmation throughout the day. It's important that our boys know their true power and know that people are standing next to them, rooting for them, even through the craziest of mistakes, the craziest of choices, the craziest of decisions. They need to know that they have somebody right there that's gonna say, you know what, and you can still be great, keep going. And so we've created an environment where our boys love school. And we did that because we created the environment. We created the school with them, not for them. And I think that's something different. We went into the community. We interviewed over 450 boys from grades 3 to 12. And we said, what would be in a school that you would never want to leave? And we took all of that data and then we interviewed a bunch of Black men, over 150 Black men that came from neighborhoods just like the ones in which our boys are coming from. And we said, what were in those schools? And what did those people do? And what are the things that came out of it? What are the most important things that you did that made you great as a student? And so we took that information that those men gave us, we took the information that those boys gave us, and then we took the science of what the brain says the boy can, the spectrum of boys. I want to be very important in saying that. But we took the science and we took the data and we built the school. So it's no surprise that the school, our boys have grown in math. They're in the 99th percentile of math and ELA as measured by NWEA MAP, which is an assessment they take 3 times a year for growth to measure their growth. It's not a surprise that they're growing because they love where they are, because they design the very space that they're in. And we have to put them first to do this work well.
I love what he said. I kind of want to piggyback off of that because I think ownership and self-affirmation are the things that are missing in our public school systems, and why schools like the one Rictor has and Emilee are working with are important. And it's kind of the heart of our organization, right? It's reaffirming who they are, and it's getting buy-in from them. And as he said, we build it with you, not for you. And I think our students around the country, around this world, know that the institutions that have been established weren't built with them in mind. Weren't built with them, weren't built with them in mind. And so Rictor is really hitting on a very important foundation that I think all of us are going to end up addressing, if we haven't already, is the importance of intention and environment. And so all of us on this panel, I speak specifically for myself and my husband, our intentions were always about the students. It wasn't about building a industrialized society, right? It wasn't about finding workers for our businesses, right? We went into the work that we're doing because we wanted to have a say and an input in reshaping our own reality, knowing what our communities, African-American communities, are being faced with, and saying, how can we improve our own condition? Because the hope isn't, great white hope doesn't exist, right? There's no one coming to save us. Taking ownership of educating our youth is our priority. And one of the questions specifically about the environment, the culture, the climate, why did we do what we do? And for us, it was a matter of identity, right? That reaffirmation. For our youth, most of them come from families that are practicing Muslim homes or grandparents. But more importantly, they come from African-American families and communities. And we wanted to stress the importance of reaffirming both of them.
Yeah, if I can just jump in real quick and add anything to what Bayyinah said, is that we call what we do the Camp Khalil experience. And with that experience, it's an intentional effort of getting constant feedback. And allows us to service all of our participants, whether you be a volunteer, whether you're a parent, and also a participant in the camp as well. So really, our culture is centered around the development of our young people and making sure they have a quality experience, a holistic experience, mind, body, and soul.
Excellent.
That's awesome. I mean, I think one thing around, so our network, we have 3 all-girls schools and 1 all-boys school. When we think about our young women, right, and there's even just so much happening right now in the world, right? Like even the way that Megan Thee Stallion just went live and just poured it all out, right? There's so much that needs to happen for young women, women of color, that gives them the space to understand they are valued, that gives them the space to understand their worth, that gives them the space to understand that they can go amazing places and they don't necessarily need somebody to hand them, the full path to get there, but we have to give them the tools to help them get there. And so within our organization, a lot of the culture is around providing those examples, providing those images of what young women can be. For our boys, same thing, provide those images of what they can be. And it's our job as educators to remove those barriers. So how are we giving them the tools they need to be able to, when the opportunity presents itself, they can then step up, step in, and they're well prepared, and they can step in just as well as their white counterparts. They can step in just as well as their wealthy counterparts. They can step in just as well as, no matter who the competition is, our goal is that our scholars are truly going to be, head and shoulders above those who are in front of them. That said, of course, it takes a lot of wonderful people to come together to provide that space. And so that culture we're looking to build really is around truly our core values of community, scholarship, responsibility, and merit. When we look at our community, it's around the sisterhood, the brotherhood, and how we're showing our scholars the ways in which they can care for each other in a very human way, as well as adults holding a high bar for them. I think having that clear high bar is essential to success for students. And if we as adults do not hold that high bar, 1, for ourselves, but then 2, for the scholars who are in our care, how do we expect them to go above and beyond the things that are happening right now in our world and society? And so a lot of our work truly is working to bring in the things that are happening in real time in the world and ensure that they're able to accomplish not just the state tests, not just the NWA map, not just STEP, but no matter what measure is put in front of them, they should be prepared. So it's not a matter of going to the test, but going beyond the test. Whether it's, preparing them for one of our community celebrations, which we call unity meetings, and they're going to share essentially show what you know and go be proud of what you've learned over the last period of time. Or it's a matter of, it's time for us to have some more of a social activity or sports, things like that. What's really great is that, in our girls' schools, the best scientist is a girl, the best mathematician is a girl, the best athlete is a girl. At our boys' school, the best reader is a boy. There's ways in which we as a society put so many gender stereotypes on who can be the best, who should be stronger at X or Y. And a lot of this work is around unpacking that for our students and helping them see themselves in the images that may not be so easy for them to find out there. So we do a lot of work around the culture and building spaces for students to be proud of who they are and where they come from and have an image of where they can go. Another part of our culture is having namesakes. So every classroom is named after a phenomenal man or woman of color where they can make those connections. We do our very best to try to bring those namesakes into our buildings. A couple of years back, we had Oprah come in. We've had Billie Jean King come in. There are many ways in which we want to show them that this can be you. If this is what you love, this is what you're passionate about, you can be an amazing scientist and be a Black woman or Hispanic woman. You can be an amazing writer and be a Black boy. There's so many examples out there, and unfortunately, they're just not as prevalent as they should be. Many of our scholars. And so a lot of our work is give them the academics, but also think about it holistically and bring those other key aspects of what it means to be a well-rounded human being into the space in a world right now that doesn't have a lot of well-rounded images.
Nasheed, can I add something to that?
Yes, of course.
I think one of the most important things that I failed to mention, and Emilee reminded me in such a very eloquent way. I think one of the largest parts of our culture is undeniably the way that we build relationships with our students and our families. But I think equally as important to that is the way that we build relationships with our staff. And because of the way that we build relationships with our staff, the very things that we're protecting our boys from, we are finding ourselves educating our adults about, because it's the adult beliefs and the adult mindsets that get in the way of children learning. I'm a very strong and firm proponent that whatever issue you see inside of a school, it's adult created. And we've got to get all of those beliefs that destroy. I mean, we have community beliefs that are destroying our Black boys and our Black girls. And if we don't protect our boys, and I'm going to speak specifically about our boys right now, if we don't protect our boys from some of the mindsets that are coming into the building with the intent to educate them. Nobody walks into a building and says, I want to be the worst educator. No, they come in with the intent to do right and don't recognize that some of their past trauma is what's getting in the way of kids being the best version of themselves that they can be, because we're trying to do things that, you know, were done to us as children, and it was wrong then and it's wrong now. And so we've got to step up. And I think we create a culture and an environment where we very firmly and sternly say, no, that can't live here. That mindset, that belief, that cannot live here. And sometimes it's something that even I was taught and that I would have to recognize is wrong. And so we just do a lot around protecting the innocence, protecting the innocence of Black and brown boys.
You bring up a really good point in there, Rictor, when you're talking about protecting that innocence, and really what you're unpacking and bringing up is the implicit biases piece. And if we as the adults have not sat down and done the work to unpack why issues like colorism run so rampant in education, to unpack why issues like adultification run so rampant, where we're looking at our young Black boys who are 10, 11, 12, and we're seeing them getting hemmed up like they're 15, 16, 17, 18 grown men. And the more that we as the adults in the space unpack our own beliefs about that. I'll never forget, I had an educator last year when we started having some real conversations around adultification. And he was like, you know what? It wasn't until we had this conversation that I realized that these Black boys are the same age as my daughter, and I don't treat her that way. And I was like, thank you for acknowledging that. Now, what are you gonna do about it, right? Like, so we have to go, not just have the space of opening up the awareness of, but also the intentionality around debunking in a very proactive and active way, because we can't wait until a child has been harmed before we make a change. And I think in our single sex spaces, it's so easy that we, like, those narratives can run so rampant so quickly, or the negative narratives of like, because this is an all girls school, you know, if a girl is presenting as more masculine, or and that's her comfort zone, that something's wrong with that. That's not, that can't happen. But you do have to be very intentional about that and create really meaningful spaces so that people can have those conversations, because otherwise their assumptions just run rampant, and it begins to play out not just in the social emotional, but then you see it in the assessment scores. You see it hits every single aspect.
Excellent. So I'm hearing a lot. Excellent. I'm hearing a lot about this expectations and where these stereotypes and issues are stemming from, and how to debunk those, and just our intentions and purpose. So I kind of want to move towards within these very unique spaces. How do the genders in which you all work with, how do they react in these spaces? Especially if this is the goal of admin and the creators of these institutions and the staff. How are students reacting to this? Are they coming out and expressing their vulnerabilities? Are they able to express themselves better? Are they opening up and saying problems and the issues and where they want to go? How are these acting out within their roles? And we can start with the Khalils on this one.
Yeah, I think this is a very important aspect of gender-specific environments. So although we are a co-ed environment, we do have elements of the Camp Khalil experience where there's separate activities and workshops where it's gender specific. So in the case with our young men, they are very, very vulnerable. They're very, very honest. They're easier to let their guard down around men, especially when you build that trust. The important thing is building a relationship. And I know Rictor and Emilee can attest to this. It's important to build that relationship first, to allow them to be vulnerable, to allow them to be honest, allow them to be who they are. And so it's reinforced when you have that trust that allows them to be open and be honest, and then, allow you to nurture them, allow you to connect with them on ways that maybe the parents are not able to connect with them. So this is what we have experienced in an all male setting, where we have mentors involved, and we're sharing life experiences, we're sharing life stories. And we find that this is really one of the important aspects of the whole weekend in which we have our young men.
I mean, this is the heart work. So this is the work where we're getting to the heart of our young men, we're getting to the heart of our young women. In these school settings, it's very academic based, right? Because it's about retention, it's about economics, it's about funding. And so a lot of times things like character development that Hanif was addressing, and sharing experiences, personal identity and development, those conversations aren't necessarily had regularly in the classroom setting. So our organization is really an enrichment, right? It's supplemental to the everyday classrooms that Rictor and Emilee are a part of on a Monday through Friday basis. Can you all hear us clearly?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because my thing is going out, but I wasn't sure if I was going out to you all. And so our work, our heart work, is designed to supplement and provide those opportunities that may not necessarily happen in their homes. They may not be happening in their schools, because our students aren't all blessed to go to an all boys or all girls school, or a school that's Black centered, like the schools that we're hearing from our panelists today. They're going to your regular public school systems, or they may be in Islamic schools that aren't run by African Americans, and so they're getting a lot of, they're not getting a lot of what they need. And so that's where it's important for us to have those individual conversations with them, those conversations about character development, about healthy identity, about health. And so, yeah, that's the hard work.
I 100% agree with you. And at our schools, we very intentionally weave that in. By virtue, we truly do have like actual a social emotional development curriculum that's woven throughout various content areas. We also in our middle schools have what we call a college knowledge class, but in many ways it's very much like get those life skills and help prepare for that next level. But I think one thing that's really essential to all of this work is that the adults have to buy in. Like the adults simply have to be on the same page of raising up that awareness for the children to feel proud, raising up the spaces and opening the doors for the students to be able to come to them, to be vulnerable and share those messages of, this has been helping me in this way, or this has been helping me in that way, as being a member of this community of a single sex school. And one thing, it popped up in the chat, somebody was asking around, do you use meditation? We actually have as one of our, we call them specials or petals. But within the realm of our curriculum, we do offer yoga in classes like that students can be involved in, where they're also learning those mindfulness skills. And so in many ways, like you have to have the right adults in the space. Our interviewing and recruitment process is very targeted and very intentional. We ask questions around everything from like really just how do you feel about a lot of aspects of racism? And we try to get into it, whether they're Black, white, brown, the different candidates, because it really is driven by the adults you bring into the space. You have to really hold that space and make it very intentional, because in the absence thereof, we send well-intentioned people into spaces and they can do harm. And we never want to do that intentionally, of course, as the organization. But as we are preparing a staff to work with our scholars, we think about the ways in which they're connecting to themselves to then provide things like the meditation, the mindfulness within their regular instruction. Because it doesn't just have to be that you go to a specific class to get something like mindfulness or to learn specific practices of self-care or learn specific practices of reflection. It can be woven into any content area if you have an intentional educator. And so in our spaces, we try to build that intentionality and prepare them with the skills they need to be able to teach the wide range of scholars that are going to come their way. Black, white, brown, we're not necessarily just for Black and brown children. We're a charter school is a public school, and so you get in by lottery. And so at some of our schools, we do have some white students there. But really, it's about empowering those young men, women, irrespective of their color and background, and creating a space where they're all going to feel like they own part of it, like they are a key member of the community. And I think in doing that, that really does speak into like whether it's Black Lives Matter or some other movement. Like if every single individual is valuing every single other individual, we're going to make a lot of progress. But we have to teach them how to do that, because not every situation are they getting it on their own.
Rictor, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think for us as statesmen, we've had, you know, our boys come in a myriad of ways. We have our boys come in and they love us from the beginning. And we have our boys come in like, look, my mom put me in this single gender school. She thinks this is gonna be the best thing for me. And you know, I'm here because I have to be. But one thing that I know that every boy wants is to be noticed, loved, and affirmed. I don't care where you come from. And so, you know, the moment we began to do that, and when we have it down to a science, like it is important for us that our boys get at least 10 interactions before they get to their homeroom. So there has to be at least 10 connections, positive connections that they get before they even make it up into the place where they hang their backpack. And we do that because I mean, who wants to walk into a school building for 8 hours a day and people never notice you, and people never say I love you, or people never say, you know, I see you, keep going, you know? And so for us, we purposely build spaces where because what we have to remember is a lot of our boys go to school and get in trouble for just existing, and they're doing things that other boys are doing. And because they are Black and brown, it is looked at as, you know, more aggressive. It is looked at as more punishable. And that's the reality of public education. And so we have a space where our boys, you know, like boys, our brains won't allow us to sit still but for so long. And so when you have a boy that's literally hanging out of his chair, it might not be because he wants to make trouble. It's probably because his brain is just restless. And so we have to start responding to behaviors and not allowing students to think that the behavior is who they are as people. And as adults, we do that so often. We tie behaviors to children, where children then grow up thinking that they are bad and they can be nothing else, you know, that they are stupid and they can be nothing else. And so we create purposely an environment where, no, cry. Boys can cry. And in our community, you know, we have, you know, 2 or 3-year-olds that, you know, cry and their parents say, shut up and stop acting like a girl. Just the damage that does to a grown Black man, like we see it every day. And so we have to constantly, you know, fight against that and challenge our adults. We have 2 full-time therapists on staff for our teachers, for our educators, not for our kids. Our kids get that, but our adults need it, because how can I expect you to pour into someone and make them whole when you're not whole yourself? When you're still dealing with trauma and, you know, things from your community, your family that get in the way of our boys being innocent, making mistakes, and us standing right next to them as they make the mistake, and we say, you know what, and you can't keep going. You can keep going. But we also recognize that, you know, when we opened our school, we quickly saw that schools, unfortunately, just haven't made Black and brown boys work hard. It's that silent, you hear it as that the silent bigotry of low expectations. Like, it's just there and people don't even realize that they're doing it. And so they get to us and we have a very clear standard that you will work hard. And, you know, I say do problems 1 through 10 and you get to 3. And at your old school, you know, a fit would get you out of that. But I recognize the brilliance in you, and I'm gonna let you have the fit, and I'm gonna sit right next to you and say, okay, after this fit is done, 1 through 10. Because that's what gets you to college. This fit won't get you there. And so we've got to have people in their life that are going to stand up against whatever they give you and be unapologetic about it and not send them away and create that prison, that prison pipeline that we see so often because they've cursed the teacher out or they've done this. No, we've got to stand next to them and say, no, you can get it right and I believe in you, and I'm going to be here until you do it and prove to you that you have people in your life that love you hard enough to get you to the other side of your mess. That's what we do, and it has worked. You know, our boys know we love them, and we literally will love the hell right out of them. We'll love it out. We'll love it right out, because we know on the other side of that, there's brilliance in that. And once they taste what it feels like to win, they'll want to do it over and over again. And so we want to create the environment that allows them to do that.
Thank you. Man, what I'm really hearing, I'm hearing 2 sides of the spectrum, and just far as what the adults, just educating the adults, and I'm also hearing how that trickles down to the student, not just from adults, from their culture, from their history, everything. So we want to dive a little bit more into the students part right now. We're going to come back over to the adults part. But as far as all these unique schools, how do it, and this is a question from the chat as well, how does it compare from being a gender-specific school to your more traditional school? So what do you see within those gender-specific schools that you normally wouldn't see within that traditional school? Why go this route? How is that a gender-specific school? How is this better? If there's ills all throughout, why is this school better? We'll start with Emilee on this one.
I mean, to be frank, Nasheed, my perspective is that really our schools shouldn't be so much different. And so like every school should create spaces for students to be seen. Every school, whether it's a private school, parochial school, urban, it doesn't matter. Every school should create spaces for children to be seen. Every school should create spaces where children have high expectations. Every school should, like, this is why we need to literally blow up the public education system and just start over again, because there's so much entrenched inequity, so much entrenched racism that we are like, to an extent, the fact that we even have to have this conversation is a little bit frustrating for me at times, because it's like, well, there's no reason that the school right around the corner from mine, or in New York City, many co-located schools, you know, the students who are literally one floor below mine, the pass rate on the ELA state test is 7%. That's literally unacceptable. Unacceptable. And so when we're thinking about like, why do these schools do better? To me, it's quite frank, because we've gone into a space where we've been allowed to have innovation take over. We've gone to a space where we've made it intentional that parent voice, student voice is a key part of the work that we do. We've gone into a space where we've allowed, you know, policies to get in the way of holding a high bar. And that just has to change. It literally just has to change. And so I love the idea of doing it in a single gender capacity, because it gives parents choice. To me, that's truly why I came into single sex schools, because I believed that parents should have the opportunity to choose the best option for their child. For some children, that is a co-ed school. For some children, it is a single sex school. And parents should be able to make an informed decision about what's best for their child. And in some situations, you know, we've had children who join our school, and to be frank, it may not be the best fit for them, whether it's parents aren't fully bought in, but it really does take the whole unit needs to be bought in. If the parents are negating what the schools are saying, it creates frustration. And the students see it. It's like the kids know, right? If mom and dad don't disagree, the kids know.
That's right.
And so we have to work to make sure that every school is getting better, create those high quality options for the families that want them. Because before girls prep, you know, if you wanted a single sex education for your daughter in New York City back 15 years ago, you were paying tuition. There were free options. You were paying thousands and thousands of dollars. And so if I'm a family of color, I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars just sitting in my trust fund or sitting in my savings account, then there was no option. And so we replicated and added boys. By that time, there were some other single sex public school options available, but really parents should have the choice. The system overall needs to just get better, period. And more student voice and family voice needs to come into the creation of what's happening in schools, and not by the white run school boards and things like that. There just needs to be more equity of voice across the board so we can create a more equitable system for everybody.
I think what Emilee is saying is very important, because it brings to light the idea of choice, of option, of us not feeling like we have to settle for what is given to us, but choosing what works best for us. And I think that as a community and as a people, we haven't always understood that the public school system wasn't designed for us, right? We're thinking it's free, you know, it's required by law for us to go. And I think, you know, for years, for decades, families owned their own education, right? They educated their children in religious settings, they educated their children at home. And I think that the type of environments that we provided, Camp Khalil, that are provided at the schools that Rictor and Emilee run, is parents are recognizing that they are valuable, they are necessary, they are intricate in the development. The children are taking ownership in the educational process, in the environment that is created. It is not a situation of I feed you and you eat what I give you. It's I know what I need and I'm going to seek it, and I'm going to be actively engaged in getting all the nutrients that I need. As Hanif said, mind, body, and soul, right? Being fed in every aspect of our existence and not being made to feel like we have to eat somebody's bad food. And that's what education is, bad food. And it's like we don't realize we actually have fresh fruit options, and we've just been eating this bad food because it's free and it's required by law, and that's just not the way it is. You know, it doesn't really have to be.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to go. It's interesting how both of you are speaking on parents, and that's kind of segue to my next question. As far as, and we'll go to Rictor first on this one. As you mentioned earlier, how you started your school and organization, how you went to the street, you went to the community, and you went to the adults, and you said, what would you want if there was a school? So talk to us about some of the feedback you get from parents. Is it when you tell them it's an all boys or gender-specific school for anyone else, you have to, what's their initial thoughts? Is there pushback? Is there some type of education? Are they with it? Or do you have to do some pulling and some struggling there? Can you walk us through the parents, how the parents feel about a gender-based school?
Nasheed, unfortunately, the world has not been kind to our Black and brown boys. And so we are seeing families running to us from all levels of income, private schools, traditional public, high-performing public schools, because what people fail to realize is that in every single type of school across the country, Black boys are still failing. And every single one, private, public, like they're still at the bottom of the barrel. So putting your Black son, putting your brown son into a private school is not necessarily the answer to your problem, because we have families who are running to us saying, you know, well, my Black son at this private school is being suspended more than anybody else there.
That's right.
My Black son at this private school comes home every day and says that he hates school.
Right.
And so, you know, again, I'm gonna take it back to what Emilee said. Love is a human quality.
That's right.
Every school should be doing it. Every school should be building relationships and loving on their kids, loving on their families, loving on, every school should be doing what we're doing. But the truth of the matter is every school isn't. And so, you know, we've got to step up and say, we've got to be honest and say, like, the charter movement was started because they recognized that there was a significant issue between Black and white kids. And at the bottom of that were Black boys. And the charter movement was started to close this gap. And here we are 20-something odd years later, and the gap's gotten wider. So it's not necessarily, and I'm not saying charter is the answer to that. Good schools are the answer to that. That you can be public, you can be private, you can be charter, you can be a good school that loves kids, affirms kids, holds them to high academic standards, you know, gives them everything that they need, gives their families everything that they need to be successful, and then they watch them go out and do that work and practice it and get it wrong on the way to getting it right. And if we don't do that at every single school, then we will see, we will see what we've seen. I think for our families, we don't tell them that they can trust us. We don't tell them that this is the best place for their son. We show it to them. And you know, we have to be very honest with ourselves. Our school's not for everybody. Our school's not for everyone. And it is very clear that people know what we are and what we are not, because you know, you'll have families to come in that want to make the school something else, and we aren't that. And so we are very clear about who we are as Statesman College Preparatory Academy for Boys, and we are very clear about what we don't offer. You know, you have families come in, well, you know, my son needs dual language. Well, take your son to a school where a second language is taught. Here, we need them to learn the language of power well first. We've got to get them grounded in literacy so that they can read and write and really be able to push their thinking and their comprehension skills. We've got to get them right there, because every school that they come from hasn't done that. And we've got to do that right. And so, you know, you have to stand very strong in a space where, you know, innovation works, but too much innovation, you're not going to get what you need. And so we've got to, our boys have been dissed all their life. They've been dissed. Disproportionately suspended, disadvantaged, like all of that. They've been dissed. And we've got to step up and say enough is enough. And we intentionally created a space that we said, this is where you belong. Welcome home. This is where you belong. Because as long as you're here, you're going to come out on the other side of this thing way better than when you came. And you'll be able to stand up and strongly say what you need and what you don't need so that people can give you, you know, what you deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody said in the chat, been dissed and dismissed. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I love it. Anybody else want to add to the question as far as the feedback from the parents, how they take? Do you have to educate them, or is the buy-in there? Anybody else wanted to add anything, Emilee or the Khalil?
I'll just add this. Sometimes the parents don't know what they don't know. So a lot of times, you know, as it was mentioned earlier, parents are trying to unlearn a lot of the traumas. They're trying to unlearn a lot of the mistakes that they've made. So when you have a space that's created, like Brother Rictor and Sister Emilee are creating, then you should want to run to an environment like that, because education without love is not education. So you have education and love go hand to hand. And what our people have been missing is love. Our people have been missing a focused, intentional approach to dedication of education. And so this is what you're getting in those type of spaces. So any parent that is reluctant to that, I just call it ignorance. You know, whether it's ignorance because you don't know, or willful ignorance, and you don't know what's best for your child. Because there's no way. And I'll even go and take it back to our history. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we made as African-American people is that we integrated too early. And I think we made so much progress when we were separate from the European Americans. And I think when we integrated too fast, we opened the gate to a lot of different things that we weren't prepared for. And so I think that this intentional approach of gender specific, and then also seeing an African-American man running the school, an African-American woman running the school, seeing that they are in control, see that they are they're empowering our young people, love, affection, affirmation, all of those things that have been missing at home and then also up at schools, I think is very, very important. So we need a focused attention as African-American people because of the traumatic circumstances that we have been involved in. So what better way to do that than when we can sit in an environment that is focused on all of those behaviors, that is focused on all of the ills that we have been faced with love and with dedication and really animation as well.
Excellent, excellent. So now we're gonna move back to the parents, or to the adults in the space, to the leaders in the space, to the teachers, to the admin, and all the stakeholders. Just how does their role within the school play? When we talk about some of their traumas, I didn't heard that word a lot throughout our conversation. Their background and the illnesses of their community. Now they're seen as the leader, the teacher in the classroom, and they're bringing that to the student. Right. So what does like the interview process look like, or what are you looking for in a candidate? Even if, because I've been in some schools where, you know, even a paraprofessional can be great. The teacher can be subpar. You know what I mean? They're able to relate to the kids. We talk about love and adorn those affirmations. Those sometimes those janitors, sometimes those paraprofessional cafeteria staff as well, really relate and love on that child. So how do we go about choosing these teachers, right, and the stakeholders? That's everybody in the building, and then elevating them, even though they may not be at the stage where they are, you want them to be, but you just see something there. So what does that trajectory look like? And we'll start with Emilee on this one.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we spend a lot of time talking about culturally responsive teaching in the brain. A lot of time talking about, you know, like Rictor brought up, just the soft bigotry of low expectations. We as leaders, have to norm on our beliefs around that before we can go out into the world and bring more people in to the organization. And so we start those conversations and think about what are the essential things that we're looking for in our staff. To be frank, we want the best educators, whether they're black, white, brown, blue, yellow, green, pink, I do not care. That said, we're going to ask specifically some real questions that will push whether or not you are the best fit for our organization. We are very intentional about thinking about with the way we incorporate scenarios into our conversations when we're interviewing somebody. So we're talking about, you know, you just watched your co-teacher yell at insert little black boy's name for the 8th time, and they have not addressed little white boy's name for doing the exact same behavior. What do you do in that situation? Do you run to your leader? Do you talk to them directly? Do you not say anything at all because, oh my gosh, it's not my job, I'm not their supervisor. And so we do a lot of role play and scenario work within our interview process and thinking about how do we try to help really see, do they have the growth mindset? Do they have the natural kind of ability to be reflective within the work that they're going to encounter? Because, you know, some days might be easy peasy and smooth. The next day, you may have a young woman cussing you out during advisory at 8:30 in the morning, and you still have to teach the rest of the day. So you got to put on your big boy pants sometimes, and you got to pull up your big girl draws and really get to the root of like, can you withstand, you know, what could be the highest of highs when you have that child you've been working with for months and they finally get that thing down pat? And can you withstand the lowest of lows where it seems like you have a child turn up on you? Then a parent comes into the office and calls you out your name and you got to deal with that. And again, still go back into the classroom and teach. And so we really talk about how do we find the best staff, you know, how do we train our leaders to identify and ask those good behavioral questions and think about the things that are going to hit people on a day-to-day basis, because, you know, the traditional ways of like, tell me about yourself, that ain't it. That ain't it. I want to hear about yourself, but I also want to learn, how do you react and how do you understand who you are and the power that you bring into this space? Because whether you are a brown person, a white person, a male, a female, we all bring varying levels of power, because in many ways in the education space, women hold more power than men. In many ways, men hold a very different power depending on what role they're in. So a male in a leadership role versus a male in a teaching role versus a male who's on the custodial staff, like all of that, there's many different ways in that the intersectionality of all of our identities come into play. And so we do our best to try to tease as much of that out as possible within the interview and recruitment process, but also knowing that essentially recruitment is an ongoing, every single day you're employed, you're still being recruited because we want to retain you. And so how am I holding my leaders accountable for the ways in which they are pouring into their staff, providing space for mental breaks for their staff, providing resources for people to continue to reflect and grow as they're going on this journey of working with our scholars? Because they're not going to, no one's going to have it all on day one. No one, no educator comes out the box ready to roll. There's always something more for them to learn. And so we really do look for that growth mindset. We look for that unmistakable high bar of expectations. And if for whatever reason, when you get into the building and we don't see the consistency of what we thought we were going to see, it's leaders to build those individuals up. So for us, it really is an ongoing cycle of we all have to hold that high bar. We all have to lean in when things get uncomfortable and have those real conversations. And if you cannot operate with radical candor of caring personally, but also addressing things directly, like maybe this is not the place for you. And that goes back to what Rictor was sharing earlier, like this is the program, this is the bar. In many ways, it's about applying pressure to move people up to that bar. Because if you're not going to be able to move, unfortunately, this may not be the place for you. And it may be that sooner than later, we need to exit you out of the organization. But because at the end of the day, it's about the students getting what they need. And if we can't move adults to reflect in their practice, ultimately, I'm fairly positive many students will not get what they need. And so it's about everyone naming the expectations and everyone holding the culture to a very high value and a very high standard. And you'll find that people who want to be in there, they lean in and they grow with you. And people who keep trying to like, but can't we be dual language? But can't we do this? Like, this is not what this is. And unfortunately, it can be everything to everybody. We're trying to be this specific, wonderful, high quality thing for this specific, wonderful population of students. We're not trying to be the chameleon and do everything for everybody. And as organizational leaders, you have to lean into that and set that bar. And if you don't, it will very likely tell on your results at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes, definitely, please.
Oh, you're speaking my language, Nasheed. This is what gets me going right here. I think we do. So we are very intentional about the way that we hire adults. And Nasheed, I think you are right. If I don't see the value as a leader in my janitor just as much as I see it in my assistant principal, then I've missed the boat. Because everybody makes relational. We are relational with everyone, and we can learn from everyone. That janitor might just very well be able to get that crazy little girl or little boy to calm down when nobody else can do it. And so we've got to recognize the power in everybody on our staff. But we are very intentional. Again, we have looked at all of the things that cause issues in schools, all of the things that close schools down. And the number one thing that closes schools down, it's not test scores. It's not kids. It's grown people with little kid problems, little kid issues. It's drama. Yeah. That's what closes schools down. And so our equation is EQ plus LQ plus IQ minus drama. And what does that mean? That means EQ is your emotional quotient. Do you have what it takes to stand up as an adult in front of the face of a child who's giving you the business? The business. Do you have the ability to say, you know what? I'm grown, you're a child. I'm gonna be the bigger person. I'm not gonna cut you, I'm not gonna slice you, I'm not gonna be petty, I'm not gonna do any of that. Because that's what children do. And fire begets fire. So do you have the emotional constancy to stay constant in your emotions in the face of whatever is brought to you? And then you have LQ, your learning quotient. Do you recognize that you don't know everything? And we all have space to grow. We all have space to learn. We want people who are coming to us that are reflective, that look back and say, you know what, that lesson was trash. What can I do better tomorrow to make that lesson even better? IQ. Do you have the intellectual quotient? Like, are you smart? I'm not looking for brilliant people from Brown or Harvard. I'm looking for people that know and are willing to know that they don't know everything and put themselves in a space to grow. And then minus drama. Don't bring no drama to this work. And if you do, recognize that we're going to name it, we're going to call you out on it, and we're going to expect for it to shift. Because one of the things we do before we hire anyone, everyone sits with us and we have what we call an "it is what it is" document. It tells you everything we are and everything we are not. And there are some statements on there that just stand out. We are not the other school. We don't do what the other school do. We are the antidote to poison. Don't bring it here. We will kill it and you will move out. And we do crews, not cliques. Cliques close schools. You get together with a group of people and you start complaining, that water cooler talk becomes something else. No, if there's an issue, bring it to the people that can fix it. Let's fix it together. Let's do this work together. And so we are very aggressive about making sure that we bring adults into a space that don't make their stuff bigger than the kids' stuff. The kids' stuff is enough. It's enough. We got enough trauma walking in the building with them. And so if we see ourselves as a hospital for adults and kids, and I recognize that as a doctor, I'm gonna have to help you as an adult through your mess. I'm gonna have to help you get through the other side of your trauma. I'm gonna have to name your trauma. I'm gonna expect that I'm gonna give you the issue. We're gonna mine for it together. We're gonna fix it, and then we're gonna move on. I'm not gonna hold it over your head because I don't want you holding issues over the boys' heads. They're gonna do a million things wrong.
Right.
So I don't need you doing that to them. So I'm gonna model for you the same behavior that I want you to do for the kids. Right. And I'm gonna talk to you about it. I'm gonna surface it, I'm gonna name it, and we're gonna learn from it. I walk into the building every day and I wanna make sure that we all love what we do. I love going to work. I love it. I'll do it for free. And I want people that will do that with me. Like, it's not about a check. It's not like people say all the time, teachers leave because the pay is low. No, teachers leave because they hate it. They hate it. They're in a space where they're not valued, they're not heard, there's no growth. being poured into them. We have a job as school leaders to build the teachers so that they can build the kids. You got to come into a space where you know that you're loved and affirmed as an adult. We want people to say, good job, Rictor. I want people to come up to me and say, you know what? That lesson was trash, but I'm going to stand right next to you as you get it right, because you are going to be amazing. If I don't believe that about my people, how can I expect them to believe that about the kids? And so we've got to do this work different. It's all about relationships. I've got to love you enough that even in your mess, I believe that you have everything in you to heal and thrive the community that we are in. We've got it all. We don't need outside people to do this. We can do this with the very people in the community, but we've got to believe that we can change the behaviors of the people that walk in the door. We see unprofessionalism and we throw it out. Oh, they come in late. Oh, they got to go. No, teach them how to be on time and hold them to that standard. Say, you can do it, and I want you to start doing it tomorrow. Period. And then expect it, inspect what you expect, and watch the outcome shift. We've got to do things differently for our people. We throw our people away when they are the very people that we need to be showing our boys that they can come from. I got people in my building that got some stories, and my boys need to hear those stories, because they can see how you can come from a life of destruction into a life where you are living and giving back to your community. They deserve that. Our boys deserve to know that you are not the sum of the mistakes that you have made. And our nation tells us every day, I'm reminded, and I got 4 degrees. I'm a pretty smart guy. And when I step out into this world, I'm reminded every day that I'm not enough. And so I've got to pour into myself so that I don't walk out here believing that I'm not enough, because the world does that for me. And we've got to teach our boys and our adults that they've got to do that for the kids that we serve.
Wow, right on. Excellent, man. It's education we call explicit instruction, right? So your explicit instruction for your adults as well. You know what I mean? And it's excellent, because we've heard a lot about love. You know what I mean? And these even affirmations for adults, like we believe, because we have see our culture, our color is bonded by our culture and by experience. So because we're Black, we have a similar experience. It's that experience that brings us together as a people. You know what I mean? But it's the vision that will keep us together. You know what I mean? So you're right on. So I really want to dive into this idea and this concept of love. Earlier this week, actually, we had a panel called Black Love Matters, which I was honored to be a part of as a guest. And we talked about Black love and how it matters in the family. We've been using this term. Everyone done said the term love on this panel. So what is this concept, this abstract thing look like? What does this look like in your schools, in your camps, in your institutions, as it relates to kids? And what's the balance? Is it just letting no expectations or no structure or no discipline? Like what's that balance between love and the discipline? So whoever wants to hop in there on this one, what does love look like in your institution?
Well, in our institution, love is a seed, and that's what we believe. And that seed is based on really this intrinsic unifying principle that we all have, and that's called nature. And so when you look at the nature of each individual, you can teach, you can educate, you can nurture, you can water, however term you want to put it. You have to invest something into that seed to watch it grow. And we believe that all of our young people, all of our staff people, they're all seeds, and they constantly need to be watered. And water can be in a form of affirmation. It can be a form of affection. It can be a form of just, telling someone that you love them, just reinforcing what is natural. And so the world, as us as human beings, is like a garden. And so we have to water ourselves, but then also everybody deserves that love and attention, that nurturing, and it has to be an environment that respects and unifies and also supports this idea, this concept. So the environment is important, just like a garden itself. It has to be, in order for the plant to grow, has free from weed, negativity, and all different things. So we look at love as seed that takes work, it takes nurturing, it takes harvesting, it takes all the cultivation, it takes all of those things in order for it to grow naturally. And then you have to take away all of the things that would destroy it from growing. And so that's what love in our environment, what we preach, and that's what we try to model.
And more specifically, he's talking about the stripping away. You know, our organization hosts retreats. So we're going out into retreat centers. The kids are getting into nature. For most of our kids, they're coming from the urban environment. So there's concrete everywhere, street lights everywhere, corner stores everywhere. So when they're coming to Camp Khalil, when they're coming to that summer camp, as Rick said, some of them come willingly. They had friends and family that came before them that are excited and telling how awesome it was. And others, no one in their family has ever been. They've never been to a sleepaway camp. They've never been to an Islamic camp. They may not have even been away from home before for a long period of time. And so they come with resistance. My mama made me come. She told me I had to come, right? But when they get there, it doesn't take long for them to, as I said earlier, know the intention, feel the love, understand the investment that everyone there is making in them, and they buy right into it. They don't want to go home. They ask, why can't it be longer? Why can't we have another session? And so what it feels like is intention. What it feels like is, as Hanif said, planting the seed, stripping away the technology, stripping away the social media, stripping away all of the outside influences that tell you who you are and what you be and what you should think. And it's listening to yourself, listening to nature, going inside of who you are as an individual before the world put what it wanted to put on you and try to shape. So it's really about them getting reconnected, being rewarded, as you said, with the truth who they are, the essence of who they are, how it's kept small.
Thank you. Emilee, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I'm sorry, Emilee.
Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
After you, Emilee. After you.
Rock, paper, scissors? Just kidding. You know, I think that this idea that discipline and love are two separate things is difficult for me to understand. They, to me, are one and the same. If you love someone, you're going to hold a high bar for them. And if at times that means you are providing disciplinary action to help guide them back onto the path they need to be on, part of love. To me, discipline is one of the ways we manifest our love. I think especially in the community of Black and brown folks, we tend to be like, I'm a disciplinarian. It's like, well, if you go one too far, then that's the wrong thing to do. Like if you're harming people and then saying that you're doing it because I love you, we've all got the whooping. And it's like you're bruised and you're battered and you're on the ground and you're like, oh, my mom gonna go get that hanger out of the closet. And it's like, I'm doing this because I love you. And it's like, well, are you talking to me after you finish whooping me? Because to be frank, can I at least get a lesson out of this? And I think in which we have to make sure that our love is coming with those lessons. Our love is coming with those conversations. Our love is coming with that high bar, and we're not letting you down from that high bar. My love is manifesting that you know that you can do this. And even though right now in this moment, you might not know it, I'm gonna know it enough for the both of us until you pick this message up. But as the educator, that means that I can't lose that. I can't, when you're frustrating me, forget that you can do it. I can't, when you've pissed me off for the 8th time, forget that you can do it. I can't spend time being angry if I truly love you. Like, I'll be upset, but you can't really truly be like to the core mad if you really love somebody. They find that way to do that one thing that weasels you back in. You're like, oh, that's right. And sometimes with our students, that turns into, you know, this child is difficult every day. And I find myself like having the long sigh every day when they walk into that classroom. But if you love them, you got to let that go. You have to start to think, what am I doing? That, like, how am I a part of why they come into this classroom the same way every day? How am I the reason that they come in and smile? I the reason that their parents know they can call me. And it's not just when I call them it's something bad, but I'm also calling with something good. You know, that love has to be the manifestation of what we want for our children. We don't want our children to go, my son is 2.5. I don't want him to ever go into a school building where every adult does not smile at him. I do not want him to go into a school building where somebody has low expectations of him. I do not want him to go into a school building where he's doing something wrong and somebody won't tell him. And so if we're going to love, we have to love when it's good and love when it's bad. We have to love when it's easy and love when it's hard. And if we try to separate love and discipline, I think we're going to end up in a very murky place, because if you're holding that high bar, you're doing it because you love somebody, not because you want to be super strict.
Right. Yeah, real quick, I'm gonna let you go real quick, Victor. I wanted to add something. It makes me think of the Malcolm X video, or the movie, the Malcolm X, where Malcolm X is talking at Harlem, and he's giving it to him, right? You know how Malcolm does. He's giving it to him. They get prostitution. You get gambling, right? And some people, he pauses for a moment. He says some people will call this hate teaching. This ain't hate teaching. It's love teaching. I wouldn't tell you these things unless I love you, right? So when you're right on, sister, when you say, addressing those ills and those negatives that a student may have, it's like as if they're your child, and correcting them. Go ahead, correct. I just wanted to add that real quick.
No, listen, I learned just as much when you're speaking as well. So I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I think you can never have a conversation about love in schools if you're not talking about relationships. And the truth of the matter is, as much as we hate to admit it, over 50% of educators are divorced. How is that going? How's relationship building going for the people that we assume know how to build relationships with kids when they walk through doors, and they can't keep the relationships in their own lives together? And so we've got to be, again, very honest about what's coming to us. We have to be very honest about and admit that things that we think are common sense aren't necessarily so common. And we have to educate our adults the same way that we educate our kids. We have driven relationships down to a science. Like that, we believe that there are we have defined what relationships are for us as Statesmen, and we define those as warm, caring, and trusting bonds of connection that exist within and between individuals and groups, and that last through trials of disappointment. Because here's the thing, we love people until they do something we don't like. And then we throw them away. And then we talk about them. And then we trash them. And then we call that friendship. And so we had to define, what does it mean to build a relationship? What does it mean to build a relationship with a family? And what does it mean to build a relationship with a student or an adult? And first you gotta build it. It's the interaction, the relational exchange that we get when we try to figure out what we like about people and what we don't. Oh, what's your name? My name's Rictor. Oh, I like football. Cool, I like football too. So it's just the general foundational knowledge that we get in learning about people. But then once we get that, Mr. Muhammad, we then gotta maintain that relationship. And if you think about maintenance on a car. You take a car for maintenance when there's an issue that arises. And so when you're maintaining a relationship, you've gotta figure out, what do we do when you do something that's unaligned to what I like? How do we handle that? What does it look like when we have issues as friends? Because again, a friendship is only as strong as its biggest argument. We've got to recognize that as adults. Like, what do I do with another adult when they do something I don't like? Do I write them off? What do I do with a kid when they are in my face doing something that just ain't right? They know they ain't got no business doing. How do I respond to that? Because here we go, that third level, we've built it, we've maintained it. Now we get to leverage it. I take all that love you have for me, and I get you to do everything that you said you couldn't do, because I know you can do it. That's what building a relationship is about. It's about using it to do the things that they say they can't do. Because you need somebody to push you. You need somebody that loves you enough to say, yeah, you can't jump 20 feet yet, but wait till we get finished. Wait till I get finished with you. Oh, you're gonna be jumping 40 feet, brother. You're gonna be able to do it. And you just gotta keep pushing them, because in an environment where you walk in and you need that affirmation to survive up against difficult academic content. You walk into a building, you 4 grades behind, and I'm trying to tell you you're gonna read on grade level. It's gonna take some love, sir. It's gonna take some love. Like, I'm gonna need to know who you are. I'm gonna need to know what you like, what you don't like, what your fit look like. I'm gonna need to know it all, so that I can push you on the other side of that. If I don't know who you are, I can't love you through that. Emilee said something earlier, like it's the love that we don't like to see. Yeah, I love you and do all 10 because I said you needed to do all 10. Because we're trying to get you to college. That fit is gonna get you to prison. I'm trying to get you to college, brother. And so we've got to build we have to love our boys enough to love them through that mess and say, you know what, that's silly as hell. Sit down, get this math, stop being a clown, because that, and you need people that are just gonna give you what you like. We've got to stop with the not telling our boys and our girls that they can't do, or not telling them that they're doing something wrong for fear that we're gonna get a fit or an argument. Or listen, I fight for learning. I will fight a parent. We will fight for this learning, because this is what it takes to get your boys where they need to be. And once you stop fighting me, you'll see the wins, and you'll see what winning gets you. And so we've got to teach our families, we've got to teach our boys to value hard work. Lean in. Let's get this thing right. We've got to build strong enough relationships where I've got to build a strong enough relationship with a family. Look, I can go to jail for some of the things I said to some of my families, because they needed to hear it. I should have been locked up for some of the things, but my families love me enough. I can say, no, you are killing your son with that belief. Stop doing it. Mom, you out here screaming and yelling, looking like a fool. Sit down. Calm down. Let's talk like human beings, because that's what human beings do. And I still love you. And whatever you need, I'm gonna still be right here for you. And if you need to cuss me out, come back in my office and cuss me out. We're not gonna do it in front of these boys, because when you walk out, we're gonna walk out and we're gonna be on the same page. And so we need people, we need leaders, we need educators who are gonna stand up against all of the things that are getting in the way of our boys and our girls being their best selves. And we've got to protect them again. We've got to protect them against it. And whatever we need to do that, that's what we're gonna have to do.
Right. Man, thank you. Thank everyone for the comments. Thank you. He said all the snaps. Yes, Queen. Yeah. So as I'm mindful of the time, I know time is getting up on us, but I do want to bring in this also the aspect that we talk about love, and we hear so much of the time that it takes to nurture and build and create these institutions and create these spaces. We also know that funding is part of it, right? But now we're taking it, we didn't start it with the kids and the purpose, right? You see where I'm going with this? For our listeners as well, we done went to the adults, we done went to the teachers, and now we went to admin and the new people coming into this environment. Let's take it a step up to the policy and to funding as well. So how do you balance that? Right, as far as loving this child and loving this parent, loving your staff, and knowing that it takes time. They're coming in 3 or 4 grade levels behind. How do you do that? But yet you're being judged at the end of the year, at the end of the quarter, by those test scores that we alluded to earlier. So how do you do that? What's that balance look like of spending your time on that child, on that individual, and some of those intangible things? Right, and same thing for that adult in that space, but also know at that same time, I gotta meet this quarter, I gotta be here for funding and to keep this institution open. As some of you are public charter schools.
For ours, I'm gonna go first because I'll what Rictor's gonna say, because this is the consistent work in the classroom that he's gonna address. But for us, being a nonprofit organization, we have to produce quality work, or people do not put money into your organization. So each year, our funding grows, because when people see what you produce, when they see how you work with their children, when they see the environment when they see the product of their children coming out of your environment, it's easy for them to say, how much is it? I'll pay for 2, right? So our funding has increased each year, and we have corporate sponsors that give consistently, comes right out of their account. They don't even have to do it. It just comes right out because we have a track record. We're 17 years in. We've seen hundreds of children, young adults, and the community was built by us, for us. So I love that whole FUBU concept, and Rictor hit on that at the beginning when he talked about getting the buy-in from all of the stakeholders. So our organization started with $63 and like 74 cents. And I have it written down in the checkbook, right? But it came out of passion. Nonprofit organizations start with passion, then they move into experience and expertise, then they move into the area of funding, and then growing that way. But for us, it really started with just passion and just really a desire to give back to the community that developed us and made us who we were. And so for us, the funding has come from producing the work. Each year, our fundraising goal increases. And each year we surpass it by over 100%. We get matched, corporate organizations match what our donors give. And so our funding comes from just what we produce. And so for us, the funding is important, but it wasn't the motivating factor. But when you do the work that needs to be done, the money comes behind.
Yeah, love is the real currency. When you show love, when you show dedication, when you show all of the commitment to the young people, then the money takes care of itself because you're doing God's work at that particular point.
Anybody else want to add to that question? Go ahead.
Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I hope that people have gathered from me so far that sometimes my opinion is not necessarily what is popular. It doesn't take a dime to teach a child. Funding is low, yes, but our kids are being underserved right now. And let me tell you, everything that needs fixing in schools ain't got nothing to do with money. Not one thing to do. Like the bad attitude that walks in that building every day, that money, like we can throw all the money at a bad attitude and that bad attitude is gonna still exist. It is not, I wanna push people to start thinking about what would happen if every adult in the building believed that they were educating the next president of the United States. Like it doesn't take money to shift belief enough to use what you have in the building to make your school an amazing place to be. Like you can paint a wall, you could get a new textbook, but the knowledge that we already have is that I would argue that is enough to get our students started until we get those new textbooks and those walls get painted. We've got to stop excusing other people for the detriment that has happened in our schools. We walk in those schools every single day. So what's going on in that building, we've been privy to, and if you're not speaking up and saying something, you're a part of the problem. Like we've got to get to the point where we step up and stand up to leaders, we step up and stand up to bad leadership, and we say enough is enough. If you got a leader that doesn't care about building relationships with you, then they certainly not caring about how the kids are feeling. And if the family's got food, or if somebody has COVID, or if somebody's been laid off, like we're in the middle of a pandemic. Our students, at the end of the year, from the time coronavirus hit until the end of the year, we had 97% attendance from our Black boys. 97% online. That's because we cared enough to make sure they get there. If they didn't have, if the computer broke down, we gave every single one of our boys computers. We're working on making sure they have one for home and one for school now so that they don't have to travel with them. We're just removing all of the barriers. When they're in school, we provide uniforms, we provide belts, we provide shoes, we provide book bags, we provide supplies. They don't come out a dime because we don't want any of that stuff to get in the way of learning. And so we've got to do better as school systems to say, what can we do with the money that we have? Like what amazingness can we create with what we've got? Because I would argue in every single state where funding is different, you're gonna find a school that's doing amazing things with the little bit of funding that state is giving them. Funding is not the issue. It is not the issue at all. While it could help make schools better, it is certainly not why schools are bad.
Agreed. But I got to come in with the political side. I didn't say it earlier, but I got my master's in education policy and management from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and spent a lot of time thinking about those systems and those structures that are on the back end of our schools that have led to the spaces that we see today, because all of this stuff is systemic, right? The amount of funding schools get is systemic. It's directly correlated to the property values of the neighborhoods that our schools are in. It's related to the taxes. All of this stuff is systemic. And so while I think many people use the funding as the excuse that we cannot because we do not have, that is really in many ways, it is a technical fix to an adaptive problem. We can paint all the walls, we can buy all the books, we can do all of those things, but if we're not building from the foundation strong educators who have a high bar of expectations, who get a high bar from their leaders, we're wasting our money. And so then to bring it full circle though, I must say that what we need is more Black and brown people at the table making the decisions about what's happening with these federal and state dollars. Because when we say that schools are underfunded and people keep yelling at the federal government about it, that's not actually where we make the change. Where we need to see the change happening is that we need more Black and brown people on the school boards at those conversations voting about where money is going. We need more Black and brown people in these state leadership seats. So when they are going over the state budgets and deciding, is it going to be $13,500 per child or $15,000 per child? Will there be some kind of other stimulus package we're going to provide for the schools? That is the direct impact of where, hello, if we want to pay teachers more, it's not on the federal government. I don't know what it is, what it is, to quote Michelle Obama. They are not coming to save us. They are not coming to provide more money. They are not slicing off of the trillions and billions and whatever of debt that we have just accumulated. Now, I don't know who we owe, but we owe somebody some money. But ultimately, we cannot sit and wait for the federal government to come bail out public education in the United States of America because they do not see it as their job. Which means we have to bring people to these state areas, to these state boards. That's where we have to start pulling the money off of. Because ultimately, that federal system is just so entrenched. We can start chipping away at that, sure, but we gotta start getting the creation of how we actually disperse the money that we do have to become more equitable, to start seeing immediate change and where we want the dollars to go in terms of education or some other place. Sure, there's so many ways in which, the federal mints produce the dollars, whatever. The money that we have, let's not argue about money we don't have. Let's try to figure out what we can do with the money that we do have, because there are ways in which I'm sitting here watching New York State have to cut budgets. Is there something else you can cut aside from the dollars that are going into the classrooms? Because if we're saying we can get better teachers, we have more money, to be frank, I don't think that's true. We'll get better teachers when we have better leaders. But I do understand that there is a piece of it that is the dollars that we're able to put forth into compensation and salary packages to be competitive with other sectors. So if we want the best STEM teachers, we have to be able to compete against the science and engineer salaries, to be frank. If we want the best, we want the best literacy teachers, the best history teachers, we have to be able to compete against those higher power earning salaries. But in the same vein, if we bring those great people into the field of education and we have poor leadership, a fish rots from the head down. It doesn't matter who you bring. If the head is not strong, people are going to be jumping right back out. And that's what we have in our system right now. You've had organizations like TFA, like all the organizations that are trying to bring the great people in. We see people on a 2 to 3 year cycle. We get great, empowered, passionate people. They come in, they feel like they hit a ceiling, they're gone. And so we have to start thinking about the ways in which we are becoming more civically engaged as a people. So when we have great educators come in, awesome. We also need you on the school boards. We need more parents on the school boards. People to come out and vote for the things that matter to us. There's something very interesting in New York State that I learned about as a part of my work. There's this like discretionary funding that just floats around that it gets voted on. And you can vote for specific projects at your schools and things like that. And it's like, do all the brown people know about this? Because I'm sure if more of them knew about this, we would have some better, better playgrounds at some of our schools, better resources at some of our schools. We'd have more schools where every child has one-to-one tech. There's so many ways that if we become more civically engaged and educate ourselves in the ways in which our vote does matter. You doing that census, oh dear God, if you are on this call and you've done the census, I need you to legitimately Alt-tab, open another window and go do it, because that's how we start getting the funding where it needs to go. And I completely understand the undocumented individuals and citizens of our community that it really brings mass amounts of anxiety to do something like that. But we cannot keep waiting for the federal government or state governments to find where we are. We have to raise our voices so that we can vote on the local level. Then we vote on the city level. Then we, in those congressional districts, we vote on the state level, because all of that matters.
Right.
When Michelle Obama said that in one state, the vote, it literally was what turned out on average to be 2 votes per district, 2 votes. I can probably go find 2 people right now who didn't go vote. And I'm like, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in right now. And it literally like a fish rots from the head down, and we are watching it from a federal level. And it is trickling into so many aspects of our society. And so when we're talking about fixing education, we got to go top down, but most importantly, bottom up. Cannot wait for the next, we cannot wait for the next, whoever's going to be appointed to oversee all school. They're not going to fix it. They're not. We have to get our leaders of our schools more engaged. We have to get our teachers more engaged. We have to get our parents more engaged. And I put this in the chat earlier, but ultimately, there's so many ways in which white privilege and white power is impacting our educational, especially the public education system. A wonderful podcast called Nice White Parents, New York Times podcast, was produced by Serial. It's so interesting when you see, they had a portion where they talked about a protest that was done in New York City that was led by Black parents in the, I think it was 60s or 70s, around the opportunities for children, and essentially how the Black and brown schools were piss poor, like facilities, trash, everything was just terrible. No media covered it. You probably cannot find it in too many history books. You don't hear about it at all. Then, in response to the Black parents rising up, I think it was like 50,000 Black kids did not go to school that day. In response to that happening, white parents rose up. Oh, it's getting picked up by all. The size was probably 1/10, 1/15 of how many Black families went out there, but it gets picked up immediately. Like if we don't start exercising our power and bringing attention to the issues that we think are most important, that we know are most important, which are the future of our Black and brown young women, men and women, mainstream is not going to do it for us. Right. So when we think about the policy, that policy begins with all of us as individuals. If we're not going to go to the school board meetings and vote for what we think is important at the local level, why are we waiting for some white people to vote for what's important for us at the federal level? Right. Start pushing, we got to start pushing the envelope. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. The ways that we're seeing more women in some of these key seats, the way we're seeing more men of color in key seats, it's moving. But collectively, we have to shift our lens of they're the enemy and we have to begin to infiltrate. And then when we get there, we cannot have the crabs in a barrel mentality that the Black people that got there sold themselves out. And so now we won't support them anymore. We have to move forward collectively as an entire community. And it's just going to be difficult, but that is the real work.
Thank you. Thank everyone again for your comments. Can't thank you enough. Even though this is a education seminar or panel, but you can see how it kind of translates into other fields. And you talk about collective power and the collective vision, and that's really what New Africa represents. You know what I mean? On a collective vision, just this physical manifestation of excellence, of our human excellence, whether it's education, which we're talking about, whether it's culture, whether it's government, where we kind of tapped into as well, and policy, and as well as business, of course. So all fields of community life, we have to be collectively involved in it, right? So my last question for you all is also coming from the chat. It's kind of phrase it in two, because it's really two part. But even though you are at in your respective institutions, would you say, or what would you say is the reason why this should be a model for our community? Your school, your institution, why should this be a model for our community? Even if someone is at a traditional school and even has parts of the day where they break out between gender-based classes or gender-based instruction, or parts of the day where they break out based on gender, why should this be a part of our model? I believe your answer would be yes. So if it's not yes, explain that too. I'm assuming that is yes. And why should this be a part of our model? We'd like to hear from Hanif and Bayyinah Khalil first on this one. Why should this be a part of our model? If it's our model, and why should it be?
Well, there's an important concept that in our faith that says the male is not like the female. And when you take that approach, then there are certain things psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and physically that has to be specific when it comes to educating a young person. Specifically, when we're talking about our young men, one of the things that plagues us is we look as the African American male in two different extremes. It's either it's the thug mentality, the gangster, or he's the super elite like a Barack Obama. But majority of our population is right in the middle, and they're trying to figure out what that identity is. So we need more of our young men and our young women, but I'm specifically talking about our young men, of people who are educating them, who are teaching them, who are mentoring them, that share the same experiences, that can solve some of the problems that they have that are unique to African American males. So without doing that, we're doing an injustice to our young people. There are unique circumstances that we are born into. There are unique environments in which we come from. There are unique problems that we all have, and they have to be solved, and they have to be catered to, have to be nurtured by people who share those similar experiences. And then just overall, as far as the developmental process of a young male, and I'm specifically only talking about the males here. I'll let Bayyinah address the females, or Sister Emilee as well. But specifically for our young men, at a very young age, it's important for them to see men who look like them, who share that same experience, because a lot of our young males don't have fathers at home. Upwards of 80% of our young men are without fathers in the home, or born out of wedlock. So with those type of statistics, it takes a unique set of circumstances, a unique environment that can be catered to specifically by our men. And it has to be strong men who are confident, who are going to reinforce that same confidence, that same commitment to them, that same love and dedication that we've all been discussing. So it has to be something unique to solve the problem of our people who come from a unique set of circumstances.
And gender-specific education, gender-specific programming is important, because when you're looking at the early years, when you're looking at the development of a human being, as Hanif said, the needs are different. And so there's no mistake that a lot of the schools that are single-sex schools are the younger years. They start from those primary years, because that's when their identity is being formed, that's when their character is being shaped. And for the number of hours that our children are spending in the school setting, it is important for them to be getting what they need. And so confidence starts at those early ages. And, you know, I liken single gender schools to desegregated schools, right? And I liken it to that because when you are in those different environments, when you are not under the gaze of another, you flourish. So in our desegregated schools, and it was just us in the schools, our schools were growing. They were thriving. Like, we didn't operate from this perspective of comparing ourselves to some other person. And so when you're in a school with just boys, and a school with just girls, when you're in a school that's only African American school, there's a certain development and nurturing that can take place, especially in those primary years, that happens outside of the gaze. It happens outside of the comparison. And so for that reason, I think separate gendered schools are beneficial for our young children.
We'll take the last comments from, let's go, whoever, I ain't gonna choose. Whoever wants to go with the same question, this will be our last, that's our last question.
I mean, since you so kindly just threw me out there, Rictor, I truly believe, like I shared at the top of the call, that every school needs to get better. Every single one. I think there's definitely a need for more education, or for teachers and staff to better understand what students need as young men and young women. And so even in a co-ed space, I believe there is a lot of power in having those gender-specific groupings at some points in time of the day in an intentional way. Every school has to become a single-sex school, but that there are ways you can pull the gifts that come out of this space by allowing, you know, boys to have a space to really be vulnerable and not have to worry about the judgment of what, you know, the girl I might like, what she might think if I actually show myself as who I feel I can be. And same thing for the women, young women, where they, you know, in so many ways, we over-sexualize, we hypersexualize young Black girls. You know, the adultification, we look at a 12-year-old young woman, and she's like, is she 15, 16? And it just, you know, it shifts so quickly. And so I think there's ways that you can create spaces, whether it's a co-ed in a co-ed facility, school, or in a single-sex space, where you're pouring into them. That to me is what's most important, that we are creating spaces where we're pouring into our children, specifically our Black and brown children. All children deserve to be poured into, yes. But right now I'm in the space where I really would just want to pour into my Black and my brown children. And while we, can try to create all types of new school models, I truly believe that there's power in, we need to just unpack and fix some of the stuff that exists. We can't just create more new things. I think we get so strung up in the hype of it's new, it's fresh, we want to rebrand something, or let's just go do surgery on the bad, ugly wound that has been sitting there and rotting and smelling for literally decades and centuries, and make it better. Like, everything doesn't have to be a whole brand new school initiative. There's so many what I like to call like bright spots, where there are some schools that may be low performing schools, but there are some bright spots in there. And so then how do you tap into those bright spots and invigorate those educators who are getting tired because they've been fighting the good fight, and it feels like they've been fighting alone in their building. They might be the one Black teacher, and that teacher is always the one they call when somebody messes up. Those people are, let me tell you, they are tired. They're tired. They can't keep carrying the weight of the entire school on their back if they're in that building, and they may be one of the few educators of color. And so we have to do that surgery, but it takes that the leaders become open and allow themselves to be vulnerable. Because where you might be super proud and like you think you have a great school and all of this, there's so many now like little covert pages coming up about, XYZ school, unlocked, and it's just, people are talking about just the ways in which, whether it's a college campus, K-12, private schools, parochial schools, where the brown people are speaking up about their real experience in some of these spaces. And, for me as an educator, it's troubling because I'm like, good grief, we thought this place was, like the cream of the crop and everybody wanted to get their kids there. And then you hear about ways in which students' voices are silenced, parents are shunned out of the building. We have to make everything better. That's where it is. I'm still a firm believer in blow it up, but I understand that when you blow it up, it takes a lot of time to rebuild. And so I'm somewhat of a both and approach, like blow up the core beliefs, but at the same time, invest into those places that have those bright spots, and we'll begin to see real sustainable change. It doesn't necessarily have to be single gender, but it has to be better. Like, that's just at the core, it just has to be better than what we are offering our Black and our brown kids right now. And so we've got work to do. We've got work to do, and I'm so excited to do it alongside the Khalils and Rictor and every other educator out here in this space, because we got to get it done. Like, we just have to get it done, and we cannot allow the excuses of funding. This is all the bigotry of low expectations. That's where it starts. That's where it ends. That and racism. So we got work to do. So if you're not here for the cause and you're gonna get tired, go find some people who will lift you up, that you can partner with, because we're gonna need each other. But at the end of the day, if we don't get these babies in a better space than we are at right now as adults, right? Like, normalize some of that therapy. Some of us on the call, but I know I get my doses regularly. Go talk this stuff out so that you can bring your best. Because if we don't bring our best, our children are the ones who suffer. And then we look to them to save us on the back end when stuff just keeps burning down. We can't do that.
Real quick, to go off of what you said, and also to make a correction. So anyway, you heard me say desegregated. I meant to say segregated. I'm sure everybody picked up on that. I kept referring to our schools in the past being desegregated and being better. I meant segregated. And I wanted to say, in terms of what she said, is that's where the love was. The greatest minds in our society, in our community, the names of people who speak, they came from segregated schools. And so that's why they're important. That's why it's important for us to have the single-sex schools, schools that are different in terms of gender and race, because as she said, we have to address the love and put that back in the schools. Funding isn't what ruined our schools. Our schools that were all Black, they were successful. They produced the great minds that we speak of and read about today.
Yes, go ahead.
I think there are a million reasons why we need more schools like mine and like Emilee's and camps like the Khalils, because, I'll give you one very clear example that I experienced just during this time. I got a chance to talk to educators and students, Black and brown educators and students across the country when I held a series of events for my nonprofit. And I was very, very surprised to recognize that Black men like me were walking into school spaces virtually right now are walking into school spaces and never had one moment to talk about George Floyd. Never had one moment to talk about, you know, the trauma that we see on these videos and in the news of just Black men repeatedly over and over again dying, and how we have to walk into professional spaces and be professional. Like they never set a space up for Black people to talk about all of the ills that are happening to us in the world. Never set a space in the school. And so you expect for teachers just to go and teach and be these great leaders of learning, all the while experiencing trauma over and over and over again, and never having a space to dissect it, to process it, and just being expected to do it on our own because we're adults. And then you have little boys like my 4th and 5th graders who are coming in and saying, you know, am I gonna die like that? You know, they're processing it, and if I don't give them a space to do it, then who's gonna do it? And how are they gonna process these things if they're left to their own devices? And so if we're not intentionality and love, like if we're not creating, and again, I'm gonna double down on something that Emilee said, it's not necessarily gender specific schools. We need schools to do better. We need schools to do better. We need schools that are gonna think very intentionally about what are the interactions that your teachers are having with the kids when kids are very clearly telling you that they don't like school. If your kids are saying, I don't like it here, what data are you using to determine why don't you like it? What data are you using to make the kids feel that their voices are heard? What are you doing to make adults feel like their voice matters in a space? What are you doing to make a family feel like their voice matters in a space? If we aren't creating school spaces where at the very foundation of what we do is just love, care, empathy. Our boys, when we did for the last 2 years what we call a Black and Brown hack. We bring 6th through 12th grade Black and Brown boys together, and they talk about all the problems of school. And then we give them the space to provide solutions for those problems. That's where it came up that girls were a distraction. They're so busy focused on what the little girls think about them that they're not even spending their brain capacity on the actual work. They're spending the capacity on cool posing so that they can look cool.
Right.
And then the other distraction, they said, take our cell phones away. It's like crack. I mean, look at it for adults. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You trying to look professional, but you're trying to look on that phone and make people seem like you're paying attention. No, these phones are drugs. And to a 9, 10, and 11-year-old boy, where pornography is rampant, just because you got this little thing in your hand, like all kinds of issues and distractions are coming up for our boys. And so they told us very clearly, take our cell phones away. Give them back to us at the end of the day. Get these girls out of our faces so that we can do the things that a society has told us Black boys don't do. So that we can do the yoga. Because I know if I put a man up in front of you, a big Black manly football man that you love and care about, and he does some yoga, guess what? You're gonna do it too. And you're gonna stop thinking that yoga's gay. No, yoga is healthy and it helps you get and so we come from a community where we believe therapy is Black men shouldn't talk about their issues. Black men, so all of these things that we know are healthy, and that if schools aren't protecting and shifting behaviors against those type of beliefs, our kids are literally walking into places that are getting them ready for places that they said that they would not send them to. And so we are intentionally and unknowingly walking our boys right into the prison cell because you come in school and you fight and I suspend you and I send you home for 2 weeks. No, because you're gonna come back and do the same thing. You're super angry and you come in flipping boxes. Let me tell you something. I had a young man in the 4th grade that came to us and all he knew was to punch and scream and bite and fight and all of those things. And I sat with him as he had a 4-hour fit the first week of school. And at the end of that 4-hour fit, I was still there and I said, you know what? I love you and you're gonna get better at this. It took him 7 months to get better. 7 months of those fits. But guess what was on the other side of that? It wasn't just his growth. His mom was on drugs. She saw him getting better. And what did she do? Went to a therapy program. And now they're in their own house. She has a full-time job. So I know this work changes generations if we do it right. It shifts beliefs of families when we do it well. And so we've got to really lean in and commit to doing the work that we said we would do when we signed that dotted line. We want to change and shift generations. We want to change and shift beliefs. We can't just fix the kids. The kids are not the problem. The kids aren't the problem. It's the adults, the families, the dads, the moms that believe that you shouldn't cry because you're a little boy and you should grow up and be tough and all of these things. What if I'm just not a tough little boy? What if that's just not in my spirit? Are you telling me that it's not okay for me to exist? No, you go out here and be whoever and whatever you want to be, because that's what you want to be. And I've got to shield whatever belief I've got, whatever crazy belief my daddy or my mama gave me about those behaviors. I've got to shield our boys against it, because they need to be in a world where they can exist however the hell they want to exist, because we certainly can do it. All Black men aren't the same. All Black men are not the same. We've got a spectrum of Black men in our building for that very reason, because I need our boys to see Black nerds. I need our boys to see Black men that play the violin. I need our boys to see Black men that play soccer, not just football and basketball. And because our boys got a very clear sense of who they are to be. And what we learned is they feel like they need to get money, they need to get girls, and they need to be really tough and fight people. How is that going to work out for our boys? That's why people are looking at them so aggressive now. That's why at the age of 12, they're looked at as grown men. The data shows that at 12, Black boys are no longer looked at as boys. They're looked at as grown men. So add the fact that if you're 12 and you're 6'1", or you're 12 and you're 200 pounds, add that to the equation. Put him in front of a police officer and see how he's treated. And so we've got to educate our boys, we've got to educate our families so that they know that they are loved, and they know that what we're giving them, they trust it enough to go do it. And that's what happens. It's the lack of trust that schools have with families, where we can't get them to do things. We've got to build the relationships where they trust us. We've got to show them that they can trust us so that we can pour into them. We can leverage the relationship that we've built to pour into them so that they can do the things that we need them to do to be healthier as Black families and healthier for our kids. We need communities that are gonna, it takes a village, and we need to start intentionally creating those villages again.
Thank you, Rictor. Thank everyone. Nothing else for me to really say. Thank you. We appreciate everyone being here, taking times on a Friday night, Friday evening. It's raining here where I'm at in Atlanta. But we thank you, we honor you, we're grateful for you to continue to do this work. Last thing I'm going to do is just ask for you to just give your social media, website, whatever information. A lot of people in the chat are asking, where are you located? Where are you doing virtual learning? You know what I mean, where you are, what you have going on. So real quick, I know time is on us. Can you just give some IGs, just flood them with your information, how they can contact you? And we can 1, 2, 3, go. Whoever. I see the Khalils are unmuted. Go ahead. Y'all can jump right in there. Your information.
All right. So you can check us out at Camp with a K, KAMP, KHALIL.org. We also have social media, same Camp Khalil on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and YouTube. And then we are right now working on our monthly virtual sessions. So traditionally we held a retreat every December and every July. July was in Florida, December was in Houston, Texas. So now with the virtual space, we had our first virtual session on August 1st. And we're going to be doing one every month. So follow our social media pages and you'll get the flyers and updates on who our speakers will be. These are specifically designed for our youth ages 12 to 17. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Rictor, you want to go ahead and give us?
Absolutely. So you can follow me. My personal Instagram is THEE Principal Craig, THEE Principal Craig. My personal Facebook and LinkedIn is my first and last name, Rictor Craig, RICTORCRAIG. Our school website, our Instagram is @Statesman Boys. STATESMEN, and on Facebook and LinkedIn, Statesman College Preparatory Academy for boys, a little bit of a longer name. And then my nonprofit, the National Association of Black Male Educators, on Facebook, and NABME Inc., NABMEINC on Instagram. Follow us.
Thank you. Thank you. And Emilee, yes.
Awesome. I am Emilee09 on Instagram, _Emilee09. Somebody took the other one on Twitter. And as far as organizationally, you can follow Public Prep on Instagram at Public Prep NYC. We are all over the pages doing some great things. Public Prep is also on Facebook. We are also on Twitter. So you can definitely follow us and find out some of the cool stuff happening there. I'm also launching a podcast if you're interested. Daily Dose of Dopamine podcast on Instagram. Coming very soon, so you can hear me talk more trash about life, education, and all the things that are so interconnected. So I'm looking forward to connecting and would love to just stay connected with many of you because there's a lot of great vibes. The chat had me on fire. The chat was great. So we appreciate you guys for being here tonight.
Thank you again to everyone. So we do have like 2 or 3 more things. So again, okay, so we're about to jump right into this video. This is a short video about the association that Rictor Craig was talking about, a nonprofit. Again, my name is Nasheed Muhammad. I was your host this afternoon, this evening. We thank you all for coming out this evening. Join us tomorrow. We have another dynamic. This is whole month of August. We got a few just the last week. So New Africa August tomorrow. We have the power of international community. All right, we have Insan Salim. He is the Glen Rose Garden founder and CEO. So join us tomorrow, 6 o'clock, same place. Let it rap.